Hello, class, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending when you are watching this, as my usual intro goes. I'm having some fun with the video filters today, so a little bit of kind of that millennial gray background. But let's get to it, shall we? Today we are going to be discussing inequality in social structures, markets, occupations, and consumptions. And so let's just jump into it. Welcome to the lecture where we ask the hard questions, like, does your Ring doorbell have more surveillance authority than local police? Or why does your favorite influencer pay more in therapy than taxes? Let's jump into it. This week we're taking some pretty heavy stuff: power, inequality, platforms, politics, labor, and the ways our bodies, behaviors, and bank accounts are wired into the system. So let's get into it. Please make sure you've done your readings. This is for Module 3. In Module 4, you're going to start the kind of exploratory watching of and choosing and selecting Black Mirror, and then you'll be writing papers on that. So you won't have as much reading. There's no real mandatory reading for Module 4, but be as that may, make sure that you're prepared. But let's get into it, shall we? So we'll start again with what we have already talked about, which is Michel Foucault, biopower, discipline, and the optimization of life. However, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper because I'm having you read this for two different periods, two different modules, because let's be honest, Foucault can be hard sometimes. So let's start with Foucault and biopower, which, fun fact, again, is not a Marvel villain, but it should be. Foucault tells us that power isn't just top down, right? It's not just top down, like an old school monarch saying, off with their heads. Modern power is more insidious. Tiptoe round the tulip. Sorry. It's about managing life, our bodies, health, reproduction, sex, race, and identity. He calls it biopower, systems that make us live by telling us how to live. This is more than government. It's health trackers, as we talked about, fertility apps, surveillance capitalism, insurance rate tied to wellness scores. Biopower in Foucault's framework shifts from sovereign power, as we talked about, the right to kill, to regulatory power, the obligation to foster life. Modern states and corporations regulate us through data fiction, right? Behavioral norms and metrics tied to vitality, right? This idea of memento mori, or remember that we die, becomes less talked about when we talked about optimization through public health campaigns, fitness monitoring, vaccine debates, or even your credit score. Life is regulated at both the population and at the individual level. It's not just don't die, it's optimize or you're inefficient. Optimize or you're inefficient. Imagine your Fitbit gently nudging you to take more steps. That's not just health encouragement, y'all. It's soft governance. Foucault would say it's part of the larger apparatus of discipline. Power works through you, not just on you. Your data point, you're a data point and a docile body. Or, as your Canvas dashboard might whisper, your productivity defines your worth. I didn't say it, right? Who's going to say it? I didn't say it, right? And yes, docility can look like optimization. The panopticon isn't a prison anymore. It's an app store. So that brings us to our next conversation, as we've been talking about with Foucault, right? Let me just clear these two slides for you, right? Technology isn't neutral, it's structured by power. Biopolitics, infrastructure, algorithms, and labor. Why tech shapes how we live, not just what we do. And you are the user, but you're also the product, right? Power, politics, platforms, and the prices of your nudes. So Foucault, as we just discussed, is this biopower conversation. Modern power manages life, not just punishes behavior. Biopower governs bodies, health, sex, race, and populations. From discipline to optimization, Fitbits, Canvas, wellness plans. Power is productive and it shapes how to live. You're a docile body. You're a docile data body, right? And yes, your GPA is part of this. But that's where we get into a little bit of a different conversation by Manjoo. Now, Farhad Manjoo, Tech Giants and the New Infrastructure of Power, discusses and asks this question: why is the world turning against tech giants? Well, because platforms like Google, Amazon, Meta, and Apple have amassed political and economic power that rivals states, y'all. These aren't just companies, they're infrastructures embedded into every layer of contemporary life. Manjoo frames these tech firms as operating in post-democratic zones, territories where corporate policy replaces civil deliberation. You didn't vote for your Facebook algorithm, yet it decides what news you see and your Instagram Reels and TikTok, right? We all have that person telling us Breaking news. You didn't elect Jeff Bezos, yet his delivery network sets the tempo for labor across the United States and increasingly abroad. These firms don't merely participate in markets, they construct them. This platform capitalism as soft empire, right? This is a platform as a soft empire. It's not colonial in land, but in logistics, surveillance, and attention. And when states try to regulate, platforms often counter with innovative panic, claiming disproportion or disruption will vanish if they're restricted. This echoes what Manjoo calls tech exceptionalism myth, the idea that digital markets are too novel, too fast, too genius to be held accountable by boring old law. So we go into this with Foucauldian concept of governmentality fits here. These firms govern not through coercion, but through systems that make certain actions seem logical, convenient, or inevitable. Think how Google Maps becomes common sense, even when it sends you into a lake. This isn't just user preference, it's engineered dependency. So a little fun fact about me, Professor McQueen, I'm an idiot. Right, your idiotic Professor McQueen, when I was 17, I was driving home from Panda Express with my orange chicken, which I was so excited about. And I am, well, nicely said, directionally challenged. I've used GPS before it was the standard of norm, which is also a point. Cars now come with GPS as a standard. Cars have lane detectors as a standard, but these cost more in companies like DriveTime, which is a low-income uh, subprime lending company, actually place them in older models and sell it as a perk. And if you don't make payments, that GPS system that they gave to you has a kill switch so that they can track and come reclaim their car because you didn't pay a payment on time. And I know this because I used to work at DriveTime, and that was one of the things that we would do. Also, Panopticon, people would call and report if people were hiding their vehicles. Anyway, tangent aside. So I was pulling out of Panda Express, and I was in what I like to call autopilot mode. I wasn't functioning outside of what I was being told by this GPS. I trusted it. And it told me to turn left. And I did. Into a street pole at 30 miles an hour. I hit the gas when I was turning. As funny as this story is, no one got hurt. I had to pay the city to replace the pole. And since I was 17, not a legal adult, my parents had to help as I was a minor. Did I sue the tech company for logistical errors in the network mapping? No. Also, how would I? How would I know how to do that? So when you hear Manjoo say tech giants have become the architects of modern life, he's not being dramatic. He's being diagnostic. He's showing us the new terrain of power, where platforms and states and users are citizens without rights. So we think about this, right? The broligarchy is a big thing right now in 2025 plus. Big tech forms of state-like governance. Platforms now shape elections, public spaces, and markets, right? Think about second and third spaces. They don't exist anymore. Why? Because they don't bring money. They don't just break rules, they write them or rewrite them in some cases. Economic power equals governing power. Foucault's fusion of market and governance. Facebook isn't just a website, it's a soft lawmaker. Oof. So let's get into Weiner again, shall we? So Lang and Weiner, a constant that we're having in this class, enters the chat. Okay, chat, who reminds us that the artifacts have politics. As we've talked about, bridges can be racist. Yes, you heard that right. We talked about Robert Moss and the way that these were designed to not include buses being able to go through. That's designed with exclusion in mind. It's not about what a thing does, it's about what it prevents. Weiner teaches us that technological form is never neutral. Tech embodies decision, choices about access, power, and participation. Think about, as it's on your slide, the idea of a labubu. If you aren't familiar, I have Professor Labubu, and he is awesome. Think about a Labubu blind box craze. Buyers purchase mystery figurines at a low price point, gambling for rares, right? It's gamified, compulsive, and built on scarcity. Resale markets then pop up, and if you want access to the sold-out Labubu, you gotta pay a large sum and put a boo-boo in your wallet, which I would wager for most Gen Z is your tap credit card and not cash, right? Digital currency, a non-material culture as a material culture. What happens if the bank closes or your phone breaks and your card breaks? How are you going to spend that money now? All of this reliance on digital tech. Weiner would say this isn't accidental. It's a system that disciplines desire, funnels consumption through dopamine cycles, and manufactures artifact value. It's fun, but it's also behavioral control in a designer box. Now, don't forget to buy the updated loop package, or you're not going to be able to compete with us. right? So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. Foucault's biopower, this cute labubu right here, or creepy, depending on how you look at it. Design choices and code power and inequality. We talked about the bridges too low, classrooms without ramps or elevator access, intentional exclusion. I've had it where students who had disability couldn't come to my class. The school didn't want to fix it. There was one elevator in Shesh, right? Technology structures social access. Think zoning, transits, redlining, access, labubu blind boxes, predatory affordances wrapped in fun. Systems discipline desire through scarcity and design. These aren't just happenstance, right? So enter into the chat. We add Jenny Davis from your reading. The affordances, AI idols, and algorithmic control, but your reading is from Jennifer Davis or Jenny Davis. Davis says that technologies don't force us to act, but they structure how action is invited, discouraged, or made invisible. Her framework is elegant and widely useful. Technologies request, demand, encourage, or discourage behaviors. It's subtle, but it's powerful. Your Instagram like button doesn't just exist, it begs to be tapped. Same on TikTok, right? It'll make it appear that you should like something. Give them the roses. YouTube had to, for a while, disable the dislike function because of the social processes coming into actual realities and why certain groups based on race, gender, and political affiliation were digitally assaulted but also impacted their earnings. Davis challenges the myth of neutrality by arguing that all design decisions contain implied politics. That shuffle button on Spotify that keeps favoring top 40 instead of your weird ambient playlists, that's not just code. It's algorithmic preference shaped by industry contracts, promotion deals, and platform side profit motives. Think of TikTok creators claiming they're quote unquote shadow banned or silenced by the algorithm, or how we've had to create new linguistic workarounds to avoid content suppression, corn instead of porn, unalive instead of suicide, graped instead of raped. These substitutions are more than slang. They're survival strategies with an economy where visibility equals revenue, and language is policed by bots. But this raises a deeper sociological question. If you say, I was graped at the party to your grandpa, right? He hears a fruit. Online, everyone knows exactly what you mean. That's an anaphoric collapse, where context isn't recovered through grammar, but through platform-based in-group literacy. Language becomes a signal of digital naivety, right? Who's in on the code and who's lost in translation, not just the movie, right? Sorry, maybe too old. Davis might see this part of the broader structure of affordances. Platforms don't just allow certain speech, they actively shape what is speakable, searchable, and monetizable. Here's where we get to have a little McQueen fun, right? And here's where Goffman sneaks in. We are now performing digital speech patterns in physical space. I hear students code switch in real life saying things like unalived or I got banned IRL. What was once backstage performance prep, the curated strategic self for online presentation, now bleeds into the front stage, our face-to-face identities. But if the backstage has become the front stage, where's the line, y'all? Where's the line, chat? Or has the platform collapsed the stage entirely, turning all interactions into mediated performances? This ties into Austin's felicity condition. This was later covered by Irving Goffman, which Davis indirectly engages through affordances. What makes speech act successful depends on context, authority, and recognition. On TikTok or YouTube, y'all, success isn't just being understood, it's being monetized without moderation triggers. Right? Language here is not only expressive, but also strategic, molded by the rules of platforms that algorithmically gatekeep what counts as appropriate, profitable, or violative. So we ask, how does these evolving speech patterns create in-group and out-group, not just socially, but algorithmically? Who gets to speak, who gets heard, and who gets demonetized into silence? And we can bring in a deeper example. Think about on your slide, it's up there, but the AI-generated K-pop idols like Maeve and Eternity. These digital performances are crafted for maximum market compatibility, like things like flawless skin, the lightning skin dynamic that exists, choreographed perfection, zero controversy. They are afforded virality without the risk of human fallibility. There's no offstage drama, no contract renegotiations, and no mental health breaks. They don't get tired, they don't age, they don't gotta get paid. Davis would argue that this isn't just innovation, it's rearticulation of labor and identity. And what's crazy, if you didn't know, y'all, is that these K-pop idols actually outsold Blackpink, and they outsold a lot of others. So they're actually performing higher than the actual K-pop groups. And that's scary because what if we don't have artists in the future? We have AI. The more polished and programmable the interface, the more the user becomes the background noise, a passive consumer shaped by convenience. So while Weiner says a bridge can exclude, Davis says even TikTok sound can govern mood, identity, and participation. Ask yourself, does your tech empower or does it just pacify? And this is where we're going to get a little bit of fun. Sashay, oh wait, wrong slide. But we're going to have a little bit more fun with a deeper conversation from Easterbrook Smith on OnlyFans and gig economy. So Easterbrook Smith and OnlyFans precarity and platform hustling, right? We can just jump into what is this conversation, right? Because who doesn't want to talk about labor exploitation with a splash of nudity? Anyone? Easterbrook Smith pieces on OnlyFans is a powerful and nuanced. She isn't here to moralize sex work, but to analyze platformization. She shows how creators, often women, queer folk, and racial minorities, navigate hyper-individualized labor models, where success depends not just on producing content, but on performing authenticity in a way that aligns with platform algorithms and market visibility. This is more than labor. It's effective branding, filtered through a system that rewards those who know how to perform intimacy without ever crossing the line into vulnerability that disrupts the customer or consumer fantasy. Now, if you happen to have taken more classes with me, or if you've taken or are in the process of completing McQueen's Inferno, the 7 classes of McQueen, you may recall the concept of counterfeit intimacy that I discuss a lot. It refers to the strategic performance of emotional closeness, a simulation of care or desire that is transactional. This links directly to Arlie Hochschild's theory of emotional labor, where certain jobs require public performances of feeling to satisfy an institutional or commercial expectation. Think of your typical Dutch bros, barista, or brewer, right, who throws a vibe check into every order. Are they genuinely that invested in your emotional state at 8 a.m., or is it the most terrifying part of ordering the coffee? Or are they performing mood as a form of labor? Starbucks and Dutch bros have both reputations for screening employees based on charisma, often hiring or firing based on who can maintain cheerful presence, even when unpaid. Emotional energy is drained, right? That charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent, they're trying to make sure you have it. They also will not hire you if they think that you're not perky enough in the morning. Now, extend that performance model to OnlyFans, where creators are expected to deliver flirtation, charm, or vulnerability in response to a consumer based off often operates anonymously. Imagine being told degrading things in a chat window and having to respond as if the user is witty, seductive, or emotionally engaging. This is not empowerment in the abstract. It's counterfeit intimacy as a job requirement, amplified through market mechanisms that are always watching but never protecting. There's no customer service line, no coworkers for solidarity, and no HR when the algorithm turns against you. Eastbrook and Smith show that this isn't just a gig in the gig economy. It's a structure of exploitation hidden in the rhetoric of personal freedom. You're not alone, but you must never appear lonely. You are exhausted, but you must never appear unavailable. The grind dressed up as empowerment, but it requires creators to perform erotic intimacy while absorbing abuse, policing their own boundaries, and remaining constantly quote unquote on, right? Now, add AI into the equation, platforms are experiencing with bots that replicate intimacy better than overworked creators. AI doesn't experience burnout, never gets harassed, and never demands better working condition. It delivers counterfeit intimacy perfectly because it has no emotional needs. As a result, human labor that built OnlyFans is being treated as disposable, even as the performance of being human remains, in theory, the product itself. Easterbrook Smith ultimately argues that models offers flexibility, but precarity baked in. The empowerment it sells is conditional, shaped by our payout glitches, shadow bans, algorithm changes, and ever-evolving moral lines. Creators are required to act as if they enjoy being consumed, all while pretending that the platform is giving them individual agency. What we're really seeing is digital economy built on commodified attention, gendered labor, and performances of connection with no guaranteed return. This is what Easterbrook Smith calls the nexus of precarity and stigma. Precarity equals unstable, unpredictable income. Stigma equals moral judgment and social risk. On OnlyFans, you don't just sell access. You manage an entire brand of intimacy, availability, and relatability sexuality. Right, and relatable sexuality. And it's precarious because it's all on you. Platform policies are vague, payout systems can glitch, and content takedowns are often opaque. What happens when a banking partner stops servicing adult content, or when algorithms shadow ban your account because your thumbnail looks suggestive? Easterbrook Smith points out that platform logic rewards compliance and punishes deviation. But the line between the two is constantly shifting. And here's the contradiction. OnlyFans markets itself as empowering, yet it reproduces the same exploitative conditions as other gig platforms. Easterbrook Smith makes it clear that empowerment rhetoric often hides risk offloading. You're free, but you're not unprotected. And thinking about this through Foucauldian lens again, the body is now a digital asset, disciplined through views, subs, and likes. Biopower becomes performative capitalism. You perform being desirable, and the platform handles the monetization. And this leads us into the next conversation, which is Marshall Steinbaum's piece on the fissured workplace and legal design. So Steinbaum is going to look at a different way of understanding this. Bear with me, I hit the wrong button. I had an awesome oopsie there, right? Here's where Marshall Steinbaum jumps in with the mic drop. Bink! The gig economy didn't happen by accident. It's legally engineered. Through erosion of antitrust laws, companies like Uber and Amazon avoid responsibility while exercising total control. He calls this a fissured workplace. You're not an employee, you're a partner. But they set the price, control the metrics, and can remove you from the platform with no negotiation or appeal. This arrangement gives companies all the control of an employer without the responsibility. The same system that dismantled the taxi medallion economy in New York City, once stable through deeply flawed form of working class ownership, then pushed workers into deeper economic insecurity. As Uber and Lyft flooded the market, the value of medallions collapsed, leaving many drivers, often immigrants and men of color, with six-figure debts with no safety that they had saved up all of their money to get this medallion for the chance to own their own company, now gone. That financial collapse was followed by some have called algorithmic harm. Drivers lost access to health benefits, were subject to racialized customer ratings, and were pushed into longer hours with shrinking wages. Gendered patterns also emerged, with women drivers facing higher risk of sexual harassment and often receiving lower ratings due to biased customer expectations about service and tone. Steinbaum shows how this isn't accidental but designed. The fissured workplace is a legal innovation, a strategy to avoid labor law compliance while maximizing profit. It frames precarity as flexibility and market exploitation as entrepreneurship. In reality, what gig platforms offer is a shift of risk onto workers under the guise of freedom. Just like the AI K-pop idols replaced real stars, gig workers are being algorithmically swapped out for delivery robots, customer service bots, AI therapists. Steinbaum shows that tech innovation is often labor elimination, dressed in disruptive lingo. Rating systems are predictive. Scheduling software doesn't just measure labor, they discipline it. Workers are nudged into docility, incentivized to overperform, and always replicate. And we're always replaceable. Even if you like sushi, there's a place here, Kura Sushi in Scottsdale, where I am, that has little robots deliver your food and a conveyor belt that brings it to you with fun music that plays. I'm watching and enjoying and cheering as you only notice 3 or 4 humans working there. So, what's up? Right? So we see this idea of the gig economy as structurally exploited by design, decline of antitrust laws, rise of fissured workplace, workers called independent but algorithmically controlled, no negotiations, no protections, fully replaceable. Gig work is a platform of feudalism in your pocket. So let's get a little bit further with Go's article, right? Eileen Go is talking about the universal basic income, philanthropy, and conditional aid. And there's in Go's article who shows us how some cities and experiments are rolling out universal basic income, UBI, but with a plot twist. It's often funded not by governments, but by philanthrocapitalists. Try saying that 5 times fast. Like Jack Dorsey, Mark Bainoff, and Mark Zuckerberg. This isn't your classic welfare model. It's a charitable venture capital, a form of private conditional aid where billionaires fund the fixes for problems created by the very system that made them billionaires. It's aid, but without branding. It's support, but also surveillance. This UBI is the age of the platform economy, where even your safety net might come with the feedback form. Go digs into the facts that these programs aren't as universal as the name suggests. They are often targeted, localized, and experimental, with heavy emphasis on data collection, outcome metrics, and return on investment for the funders. Eligibility may be restricted to specific cities. Populations such as single mothers, formerly incarcerated individuals, or unhoused folk This creates tiered access to basic support that echoes the conditionality of traditional welfare systems, but now is rebranded through clean interfaces, app-based enrollment, and tech industry rhetoric about impact. What looks to be innovation is often just repackaged gatekeeping. As of at least 2025, we are witnessing an expansion of these conditions in the public assistance programs. This is a growing political and bureaucratic support for the policies that tie into benefits like SNAP or Medicare to require a number of hours worked, a shift that adds both administrative burden and moral reframing to the recipe of care. These workforce-style requirements resurrect familiar stigmas, where need is no longer enough. Productivity becomes a new benchmark for deservedness, right? This is where the labeling theory becomes relevant, as Howard Becker discusses. As recipients navigate these conditions, they are often framed as people in need. They are not framed as people in need, but as potential cheats. Online discourse frequently invokes the figure of the welfare junkie or the system abuser, reinforcing cultural scripts of moral failure rather than structural inequality. These narratives are powerful, not just because they misrepresent the data, but because they shape the terms of the debate. They displace attention from those at risk of destitution and instead center suspicion and blame. Go helps us see these new models of conditional aid, whether public or philanthropic, are not just about who receives money, they're about how care is administered, how worth is assessed, and how social support is branded. The logic is clear. If you want help, you have to prove you're not the kind of person who wants help. The platform doesn't just deliver aid, it produces public performance of compliance. And here's a key point. Who decides who deserves help? In the traditional welfare systems, flawed as they are, that theoretically a public policy conversation. In the new UBI pilots, it's a matter of corporate benevolence. That means Jack Dorsey becomes both the benefactor and the moral gatekeeper. If you don't fit the criteria, you're out. Not because you don't need help, but because you don't fit the brand logic of inclusion. And there's a bigger question Go raises. Is this really redistribution or just reputation laundering? UBI experiments allow companies to claim moral high ground with a kernel of truth while continuing to exploit labor on the back end. Through their gig platforms, cloud infrastructure, and data harvesting practices, this philanthro-neoliberalism in action, the same platforms displacing workers, now offering no strings attached aid that comes with an app, a contract, and a built-in story for the shareholders. So we can bring back in the Foucaultian biopolitical lens one more time. In Go's world, aid is not just about survival, it's about regulation. You're made visible, measurable, and narrativized. Your poverty is transformed into a data point, your personal recovery into a social experiment for VC-backed optimism. It's biopower wearing a Patagonia vest. So Go asks us, in the future of social safety, is the future of social safety, or is it just a band-aid on structural violence? With the band-aid branded by Salesforce. If you didn't know, as of 2025, the Salesforce CEO has openly stated that the current managers may be the last generation to oversee fully human teams. With reported productivity increases of 30 to 40% from AI bots, the company is planning to replace a significant portion of the workforce with automated systems. From corporate lens, this offers more efficiency, greater ROI, and lower labor costs. But it also raises the question, how much more of the human side of work, care, and connection will be offloaded to machines? And what narratives will be crafted to make it socially acceptable? If structural inequality is now something to be patched by tech firms and then managed by algorithms that replace the very workers affected, are we witnessing the support or substitution? Go pushes us to see the long game. When care is automated, the logic of replacement extends beyond jobs into the realm of human worth. What does it mean when aid becomes PR strategy, philanthropy becomes a way to scale back human altogether? So something to kind of think about, right? So let's bring this together. Biopolitics and everyday tech. Technology embeds governance, labor, and morality. From nudges to norms, tech scripts of how we live, surveillance design, labor structures equals everyday biopolitics. Foucault, Weiner, and Davis equal the interpretive power toolkit. You always need to ask who benefits, who's erased, what's sold as inevitable. And some final thoughts and discussion points for you. Is OnlyFans liberation or labor exploitation, or is it both? Do AI idols redefine creativity or erase labor and identity? Should governments regulate affordances the way we regulate content? And how does fun become a tool for exploitation? Did you do your daily yet on your game of choice? And we also, did you forget to continue your streak on TikTok or your Snap streak? Are you being controlled by these thoughts of interconnection but becoming kind of habitualized, right? So the next time someone says tech is neutral, you can confidently respond, hopefully, only if you ignore history, labor law, power, class, race, gender, and reality. But hey, yeah, tech is totally neutral. And I will see you in the next class. Professor McQueen and his aide, Professor Labubu, wish you a happy rest of your day. If you need anything, email me, and in Module 4, you will start looking towards Black Mirror, and I will speak with you then. Take care.